Welcome to a new episode of the Lebenspraxis podcast. Today, for this intro, I'm in the mountains because it fits very much for this episode, because I'm talking with Udo Neumann, who's very known in the climbing scene, at least in Germany, but also has international reputation. And I'm very happy to talk with him in this episode, because the first time I read a book from him, I was 13, 14, something like this. I read a book, I saw a DVD, and now years later I have the opportunity to talk with him about climbing. And Udo was for a few years the head coach of the German bouldering national competition team. And when he was the head coach there of the bouldering, they won several competitions. So there was like a golden age in the German competitive bouldering. So he has some very, very interesting ideas, controversial ideas also here and there. So let's jump right in and have a good time.
Hello, Udo. I'm very excited to have you here in the podcast. And I want to directly start with you with the first question without any further ado. And I would like to ask you something about your journey in the climbing, because you're climbing for a long time. And maybe you can tell the listeners how long you are already climbing and how your personal connection to climbing evolved through the years. Like, how does the Udo now think differently about climbing than the 20-year-old Udo?
Okay. Thanks for having me, Josef. I started climbing in 82 officially, and so far as this was the year where I got some equipment. And just to give the listener a little bit an impression of how climbing was at the time, it was just at the beginning of sport climbing. And it was called sport climbing because then it was important to not use any man-made help in the walls. In the times before sport climbing, it was all about just arriving at the top of a cliff or ideally of a mountain. And it was not so much about the means. So you could pull yourself, you could basically drill a bolt into the rock and pull yourself up. And this would be still a valid ascent by the standards of the 60s and 70s. And then came free climbing, where only the rock features were allowed. And then, because then the emphasis changed a little bit to the athletic aspects of climbing, then it was sport climbing. And in the early 80s, this is what started. And with it came a lot more of, or a lot less of risk. So sport climbing, per definition, didn't happen on loose rock. So when I started climbing, that was really important to me that and I'm still not into being killed by a random rock that falls on my head. Like if I kill myself, then at least I want to be in charge of it. So I want to do something stupid to suffer harm, and not like some as I said, some random rock that falls on my head, or an avalanche, for example. And I started, and a little bit of background why I even, being from Cologne, why I even was attracted to climbing. I was a whitewater kayaker before, and it's a fantastic activity. So basically you paddle down whitewater. But at the time I was still a teenager, no driver's license, and so we were really reliant on the adults to pick us up after we went down the river. And I found this really annoying. I was a kind of difficult child, and I really was not into asking adults for help. And so I really appreciated, with the climbing, I appreciated mainly the freedom, and to have much less equipment. This is, up to this point, I'm really not into very equipment-heavy activities because I'm naturally really lazy, and for me it doesn't add anything if I prepare my mountain bike for one day and fine-tune my mountain bike dampening. I much rather go out and start immediately without too much overhead.
It's interesting that you say that, Udo, because I think climbing I would still think about it as like the rope climbing as a activity that is pretty heavy on equipment.
Yes, no, absolutely. And this is actually, let's basically fast forward. This is why I'm mainly bouldering. This is just one aspect. I mean, maybe we talk about this later, like how bouldering is also in the social ways much easier to do. You can go with you can go with somebody who doesn't even climb and still both parties will enjoy themselves, whereas with rope climbing you need to belayer and so. But compared to paddling, it was far less equipment, and I really appreciated it. And it's also, I mean, what's also a little bit. You have a background in parkour, and I think the mindset is really similar. At least the mindset we had at the time. It was well before climbing gyms, of course, and there was a lot about being like a huge aspect. And up to this day, for me is like interacting with the environment. There's a huge aspect, and so even in the early 80s in Cologne, the nearest cliff was like 1 hour with a car away. So we did a lot of bouldering. And if you look what we did at the time, it's very similar to what you would do with parkour, in parkour, a huge aspect, because it's both the same. You observe your environment and then you pose yourself basically your own challenges. You're in charge of what you want to deal with and what you ignore. So yeah.
And Udo, in the 80s, because that's very interesting for me, because I started parkour because we saw like two movies. There was one movie called Yamakasi and the other one Banlieue 13, or in German weirdly translated to Ghetto Gangs for whatever reason. And we saw these movies, and then we saw some internet clips about from David Bell and so on. And this is how we went out. How did that work in the 80s? Was there some older people that showed you that there's this climbing with ropes, or how did that work?
I mean, it's almost a little bit, I do this with mixed feelings to mention Reinhold Messner, but at this time, it was not this kind of bitter old man that he is, sometimes comes across as nowadays. At this time, he was still a young person who was infusing climbing with a lot of new ideas. And what I just mentioned, to not do anything possible to arrive at the peak of a mountain, that was actually a part of Reinhold Messner's ideas. And also this only using what the rock has to offer. And he was also in the late 70s, early 80s, without even knowing it and without rating it this way, he did the first 511, or if you want to call it 8- in UIIA standards in the world. In Heiligkreuzkofel Mittelpfeiler is although the grading had only 6 grades, with 6 being the hardest. Looking back, Reinhold Messner already climbed well above that in the early 80s. And he has been always prolific with his writing. And there's one book, Der 7. Grad, the 7th degree, which was really influential, and which was basically maybe the first popular book that addressed this, that it makes a huge difference if you drill a bolt into the rock and then you pull yourself up. So basically you can climb anything, or if you don't do this. And again, it's very similar. Like at the beginning, we were asked a lot. We were climbing on, for example, Hohenzollernbrücke. That's in Cologne, the bridge that faces the cathedral. It's a very prominent location, and so we always had a lot of people watching us. And like, of course, as you know, people ask you why you're not using the stairs. But this question is exactly what it's about. Of course, you could you can use the stairs and arrive at the same point, but you would be a different person. You would be arriving at the same point, but the journey would have been different. And so this was a big part. And also I really have to mention another person, Reinhard Kahl, who unfortunately died later in the Himalayas. And he was a German, and he was actually the first one to open the degrees to the 7th degree. And it was actually Reinhard Messner's book, The Seventh Grade, was written after Reinhard Kahl said, okay, this climb is definitely deserves the 7th degree. And Reinhard Kahl was a fantastic photographer and also really funny and very entertaining writer. So if you have a chance and you find the book Erlebnisberg, Zeit zum Atmen by Reinhard Kahl, that was super influential for all the climbers of our time.
I need to write this down.
Yeah.
And I sorry, I have to ask about this time because I like the history stuff, and I'm much younger than you, Udo. So for me, it's very interesting. Is the equipment back then, was that significantly different from today? Like the shoes or the ropes or the belts or something like that?
Actually, this time was actually even my first pair of climbing boots were still like traditional climbing boots. You could put a crampon on, because at this time, it was just when I started climbing, there was still this controversy if the so-called friction boots that had like just a flat sole would be something to stay or just a fashion thing that would go, and it was even difficult to buy them in shops, because they were so controversial to not climb with mountain boots, and the shoes were terrible. Like I ruined my toes. Because there was like crash pads were only invented in the mid 90s, and so had so many falls just on the ground with really super tight, obnoxious climbing shoes of the past. So like everybody who started climbing in the 80s and bouldered a lot at this time has ruined toes this way.
That's very interesting. Okay, so you did bouldering, you jumped down, but with the shoes that was okay.
Yeah.
It's funny because it remembers like my own journey with the bouldering was that first I thought I don't want to wear the shoes, and I just go with like barefoot shoes or barefoot. Then I was in Fontainebleau. I was there already several times, but mainly did parkour. Then when I was there this time, it's 10 years ago, something like this. I was alone and I want to do more bouldering, and I got like super annoyed that I felt like, wow, I cannot climb all these routes in the guide that I want to. Like there were routes that I could climb, but I felt like, with the shoes, I'm always slipping, and it was like in a colder time of the year, November or something like this. So I want to have shoes, and then I went and bought my first climbing shoes in Fontainebleau, and I bought them 2 sizes too big on purpose because I didn't have a crash pad, and I felt I don't want to. I was thinking about my toes. I don't want them to be too
very
cramped
smart.
when I land.
Very smart. But on the other hand, you cannot climb on the same. You cannot stand on the same holes, of course.
Exactly. So later I bought normal climbing shoes and a crash pad.
And I'm really like nowadays. Like if you ask what really changed, talking about this, because many things haven't changed at all. Like my view on climbing, I think. Like or my original motivation, but one thing that has certainly changed is that nowadays I'm almost full circle. I have really fantastic climbing shoes, but after an hour they get really annoying. And I think the older I get, the more I'm just happy with just wearing 5 fingers or even barefoot or so, or just some sneakers, because it's there's still enough to Boulder, especially in Fontainebleau, and I'm really. This is really like maybe the only thing where I feel, okay, the young people, like lots of super hard boulders need like 20 crash pads, and really good spotters. And so, and this is fair enough for the people that are in the sport now, and it's all cool. But for me, that's basically not what bouldering is. Bouldering, in my mind, and climbing in general, and parkour, and so if you need too much around it, and if you the same with parkour, with this really dramatic and dangerous stunts, this is something I'm totally not interested in. I mean, if people do this for their own motivation, fair enough, cool, but I find it totally unattractive. Like where you have to basically spend sleepless night if you should do it or not, and then you go okay, it might be an interesting individual process, but a lot of bouldering nowadays needs lots of crash pads, as I said, lots of spotters. It takes away from the lightness and the joy, I think.
There was last year, like I'm in Fontainebleau every year, and last year, me and my friends, we had a very simple experience that was very strong for us, which was that we just saw 2 French people climbing, and we don't know their age, but I would say they were approaching 80 years old, and they were climbing together, a male and a man and a woman. They told us we asked them, are you a couple? And they said, yeah, kind of, I think they were like in this age where maybe it was funny. And they were just climbing, they were basically climbing the children routes that are there, but barefoot. And they only carried like a super small mat for their feet And it was so beautiful how they moved very beautiful. And I felt, wow, if climbing allows that you can climb your whole life, and also with this simpleness, like you can go into the woods. Yeah. Everything you bring is this little carpet. So you put the sand off the shoes so you don't destroy the block. This is amazing. Yeah. Like this is such a wonderful practice. Yeah. What's your take? What's your idea on this longevity in climbing?
No, I couldn't agree more, because I might even know these people. They were probably in my if they're 80, they're probably the parents of somebody I climbed with. And no, it's fantastic. And just for the listener, why you even have to carry a carpet is because it's very sandy in Fontainebleau. It's almost like a desert. It's almost like at the beach. And as you said, to protect the holes from getting too polished. But even with sandy feet, you cannot really climb. You cannot stand on anything, even barefoot. And so this is why you need the carpet, but the carpet is almost, because if you think about it, already the carpet takes away a little bit of the lightness of it all. This is why, I don't know if these folks had it, but we even had the carpet on a little string, so we could use it to clean our feet, but then carry it up the boulder, so you can down climb the boulder, because otherwise you have to go back to where you started the boulder. And a lot of Fontainebleau circuits are made in the way that the down climb is interesting, and then it leads you to the next boulder problem, and then you climb the next boulder problem. So it would be almost like the floor is lava would be their idea of a circuit. And of course, anything you have to pack and you have to get back to is taking a little bit away from the joy of this experience. So this just like, if you mentioned the carpet, for you it might have been like super minimalistic, but for me, even the carpet, I'm like, okay, I wish I wouldn't have to go back to the carpet.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to this, Udo. Like, I also like a lot the minimalism, like to really just me, just shorts on, and that's it, and the rock.
Yeah.
Nice, Udo. You are known in the scene, especially because of, let's say, a certain years. Like, you are known for long. Like, I know you for a long time. Like, I wrote to you when I asked you if we can do this podcast, and I told you, I think I was like 13, 14 when I had the first time a book from you in my hands. I remember that very clearly, and I think we also watched like a DVD or something like this. Yeah. And I grew up in Rostock. So this is where really there's nothing to climb anywhere close. Yeah. And there was also no climbing gyms. And we were sort of, our first climbing was at a friend who was living like outside on Fischland, Das, and they just put some climbing holes on a little barn. And this is, we did some climbs there, and we looked into the book and watched some of these videos. I think it was a DVD or something like this. And so you are in the scene for a long time, but in the recent years, you have to remind me which year this was, but you became the coach of the German Boulder team. Tell me if I say this correctly, because maybe it needs to be said in a different way. And there was these years when the German team was really excelling, and people like Jan Hoyer and Juliane Wurm, and tell me if there are more people to mention here, they won many competitions. And you were the person that was very involved in their training. Do I say this correctly, or do you want to?
Yeah. That was the backstory, or what happened before, is that I was a little bit controversial figure for the Alpine Club. And the big part of is in Germany, big part comes from just not being from Munich or from Bavaria, because the Alpine Club, of course, is in Bavaria. And up to this day, there's they really see themselves as being expert because they're called the Alpine Club, though, so they surely must be as expert in climbing. But in like in the 90s and in the 2000s, I felt they lost kind of track of the modern developments of sport climbing and especially of bouldering. And so in 2001 there was an interview with me in the German magazine Klettern, and it was considered to be really controversial. And there was a podium discussion afterwards at the German Championships about my so-called controversial ideas, blah, blah, blah. And looking back, I mean, some of this I just did for provocation, but looking back, it worked out nicely. So it's almost like a story of how it pays off to be a little bit controversial sometimes.
What was controversial? What was controversial?
For example, it was like one thing that was really annoyed by, and still annoyed by, although this is an aspect that got a lot better over the last 3 or 4 years in lead climbing, is you watch a lead climbing competition and a lot of it is about just clipping the rope. I remember there was one thing in the interview I said, like, I want to watch climbing competitions and not clipping competitions. The whole climbing at in the 90s was getting really, really slow, and like control was like the big thing, and the more control you had over your body. And maybe we can talk about this, because there are all kinds of implications also for mental health. I think climbing in the 90s was something. The more you were in control of your body, the more successful you were. And there was no notion of letting go or flow or anything like this. It was like basically move, stop, control, reach up. Like really crimp the hell out of this hole, and the stronger you are, the better this is, the more you have this feeling of control. And then you would kill any momentum or anything there was, and then you would do the next move. So people were moving like robots. And there was one aspect, and at the time I gave this interview, was already climbing. I was living in the Frankenjura at the time, and I was climbing a lot with Austrian climber Clem Loscott, who was really ahead of his time and was like one of the first person who climbed, who bouldered 8B plus, 8C, maybe. And he was also like a very controversial figure, like very, very outspoken. And so we well, a little bit like a little bit disruptive. But for me, somehow I cannot complain. Like I'm definitely not the victim in this, because in 1 year after the interview, I was offered to route set at the German championships, at the Boulder championships at the time. And it was really terrible. The wall was terrible. The whole selection was really terrible. But at least I must give them credit for offering me this opportunity, And so after this year, I set a couple of German competitions, of course with other people, but still now this way, if I hadn't been in this situation, I couldn't complain so much, Like, so I learned a lot of things that went wrong, like even with the wall shapes of the time, but also especially with the whole selection, and I also had a different perspective on it, but because in the 90s I stayed a lot in the US, and the US climbing scene, especially the bouldering gyms, were far more advanced than anything you would have in Europe. So I already had a different perspective on this. And so I got the setting job, and then I ran into the Alpenverein people from time to time, and we always were more fighting than anything else. But somehow in 2009, they were like, okay, somebody has to take care of our bouldering team, because bouldering, I mean, at this time was still like, bouldering was considered to be really inferior. It was not real climbing. It was at the best, it was good preparation for, or good training for real climbing. So I think looking back, again, I cannot complain. They were offering me this position, but they were thinking, okay, now we have we have taken care of this job, and okay, we don't have to think about it anymore. It was more like, but what they didn't see, I mean, at least some people from the Alpine Club, is at this time we already had in the Cologne area, we already had really interesting route setting, and we had a pool of, you mentioned Jan Hoyer, who was really still very young at the time, who later joined the team, but Jule Worm, she's born in 1990. And her boyfriend at the time, Jonas Baumann, who I really owe a lot. And so there was this energy, like of doing something new and different, and also a little bit in opposition of the official mainstream Alpenverein dogmas. And that was really motivating for us. So it was fairly easy for me to get buy-in, to really try out some crazy trainings. And at first I thought, okay, I take this position for the Alpenverein for 3 years. And I thought we would be successful much quicker, but then, of course, never goes according to plan. But like, especially after we made some changes in 2012, we did so many innovative things that in 2014 we were on top of the world. So.
Can you tell us some about this innovative things, about these crazy things, Udo? Yeah. I think I would be very excited to hear something about that.
A big part is in the route setting, and we at this time it was basically the route setters were they still are in a way the natural enemies of the competitors, but even on a national level, it was like if something didn't work out, the athletes would be complaining, but this boulder problem was just impossible, or was really dumb. So there was always this confrontation, and the route setters from their point of view, they would say, these guys are just too weak, this is why they couldn't climb the problem. But there would never really be a discussion about these things. And in 2012, we made a plan with 3 of the then best route setters in Germany. And we said, okay, with this team of me as a coach and these 3 route setters, we do every team training from now on, we do together. And we plan together and we involve the athletes. So they would basically set the boulder problem, the athletes would struggle or not, and then there would be a discussion. What was the intention of the boulder problem, and what worked according to plan and what didn't work out. And this alone made a huge difference. Our first team trainings were a fiasco, because everything was too hard, but then we really got into the groove of it. And
So for every training, new boulder problems were created, like...
Of course. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it's also like a lot of what basically since then, or since even before, I basically in my mind, the back of my mind, it's not like a proper structured, but I almost in my mind I can tell you, okay, this is a problem that has to do with maybe your mental, your that you're clinging to control, and I challenge you to basically let go of this control and do a little hop, and the reason why you're struggling in this situation is because you don't want to let go, you don't want to get out of your comfort zone. So I tease you with this, so I get as a route setter, I get a result, Josef struggles with this boulder problem because he's so rigid, so what I want to say is that I still have almost like hundreds of categories, okay, this is maybe a little mental problem, there's some mobility involved here, and so as any good route setters, you exactly know what you have to set in order for people to struggle, and for different people, really good route setters basically could, if they wanted, would be very unfair. They could not allow certain climbers to even be in semis, and other climbers that maybe not even the best to win the competitions if they play to individual strength or weaknesses.
With the route setters, they're sort of the masters in the background, no? Like they don't get any credit, it seems, no? Like someone wins the competition, or
it's a little bit more. Knows the... Yeah, it's a little bit. It depends on, of course, how, from where you look at it. In the inner workings of the IFSC, is super, super important, and it's also acknowledged. And there's also a huge political, of course, because you create the route setters create, and the wall designers before, and the whole designer, they create the competition. And so, of course, as a federation, you want to be influential and you want to be in charge, so basically, for example, you want to have lots of international route setters, so that it's more likely that your route setters with your culture, who might even set at your team trainings, are setting at the competition. And this was also something we unfortunately, the Alpenverein totally neglected this again. So right now, except for Christian Bindhammer, there is no working international route setter from Germany.
Because there are route setters that travel the world. There are international route setters that they are asked, please come here. Or does it work like this?
Yeah, it's almost you're assigned this job. There's a pool of international route setters that would be potentially qualified, which is unfortunately a little bit intransparent, especially nowadays. But okay, different story. But then basically you get an assignment that Josef, you're going to set at the World Championships, and then you go there wherever this is and try to do the best job with your team that is possible.
And Germany has no. Germany has no route setters currently that are like in this league, in this international league.
Germany has the setters, but they're not backed up by the federation, because the federation doesn't understand, because it would need some also political influence, and it would mean some lobbying for these setters and facilitating for these setters. And over the last years, this hasn't really happened, unfortunately. And it goes even like nowadays for the training situation. It is a little bit that even like a lot of foreign setters are hired because the Germans themselves don't, or I shouldn't say the Germans in general, but the federation and the whole culture around this, they're aware that they don't have any route setting stars, so they hire some Japanese route setters, which are fantastic. But I think a lot is lost in that the athletes don't learn from these guys setting, because communication is difficult, and there's never really a culture that where you as an athlete would understand, okay, this is the process the route setter goes through, these are the ideas this route setter had for setting these particular things. Now,
so what is missing is more of a loop, like coach, route setter, athlete, that they work more together, like you did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is absolutely, and it is basically no question. And this year made it even more obvious. And it's really different how the sport is developed in different countries. And of course, you have Japan, who is like the dominant force. Maybe we can talk about why this is later, if you're interested. Or and then in Europe, it's mainly France, who has, especially at the beginning stages, like if you're a French kid and start to climb, most likely you have better coaches and better setting and better circumstances than in all other European countries. You know? And then, of course, you have, as in many sports, you have Slovenia, which has 2 million people, but has by far the best climber in the world.
Like every sport has their small country, like in sprinting it's Jamaica, and in weightlifting it's Bulgaria, and in climbing is Slovenia. All right, Slovenia. Udo, I have one. It's like a small question. I hope it doesn't get too big, because it could potentially open like something bigger. But it just came to my mind, because there are female and male competitions, no? And you told me when we talked before that first this was together, like they all did the same routes. Now they're different routes. I hope that's correct, but do the routes for the females, are they made by female route setters?
Mostly not. It's just starting, and it's not so easy, and it's not necessarily that female route setters, because they have to prove themselves with the boys, and so it's not necessarily that you would, in most cases, you wouldn't even realize that the female route setter was involved in all of this. So far it's going okay. They're moving into the right direction, and the IFSC totally has this on their radar. It's a thing, but so far it's not. It's still an ongoing process. And like one aspect, for example, is that the females are often complaining about this, is that in most cases new ideas are tried out with the boys. And not with the girls. So the girls' rounds tend to be slightly less innovative and a little bit more boring. Like the crazy stuff is mostly. I mean, there are exceptions of this, but as I said, they're trying really hard. They're aware of this, but unfortunately, very often it's true that the female rounds are a little bit more conservative.
Like if you go into a climbing facility, or if you are climbing outside, from my observation, it's often 50-50, like males, females, like at least here in Berlin in the climbing facilities. In the top field, how big is the difference in difficulty? Like if you have climbing, the male climbing competition and the female climbing competition. How big is the difference in the difficulty of the routes? How big is the difference here between male and female in this sport?
Yeah, basically, there's no difference. I mean, we have lots of discussion with. It's a hard pill to swallow especially for the strong boys. But there's really no question that Janja Gambret would be in many male finals. No, there's no question at all. And as a climber, if you look for the complete climber, it's super obvious. Like, there's no male climber right now like Janja Gambret. Is really true. And the only difference that needs to be there and that makes a one-on-one comparison a little bit tricky is that it needs to be adjusted for height. So Janja is 164. And then, of course, sometimes she couldn't reach. This is well below the average male competitor.
What are the male competitors? Are they big? Are they tall?
I would think like an average they would be like maybe 10 centimeters taller than this. They're in the low 170s or so. So, and that can make a little bit difference. And this is actually almost the only difference. Of course, there are moves when you have like certain aspects of shoulder strength, as you know. That it's almost impossible for females to get this kind. Like for example, a front lever for a female athlete is really high end. For males, it's something like many males can do a front lever, no problem. And some can even like the super like. Just for the listener, like a one-arm front lever is still world class. On the world, there are very few people that can do it, and no female, I think, maybe will ever do unless she's 130 tall or so, like really short. But this kind of movement is a huge difference.
But I find it so beautiful, Udo, that this sport, it has this longevity. You can do it your whole life. And it has this, like the difference in male and female is so small. Like, yes, there's something about height and yes, there's something about strength. And this is also what I encounter when I climb with friends, and I climb a lot with female friends that sometimes, because I'm usually taller than them, and then it's like, yeah, sorry, I can just reach it. It's a bit boring now in that sense that I can just reach it, and for you it's like more difficult, or I can just pull myself up here or something like this. But compared to other things, like for example wrestling, there's this, like, it's very tricky often. Females and males, they can practice together, they can wrestle together, but often the difference in weight makes it, and also in approach, in mindset, it's making it often much more difficult. And this I found so beautiful about climbing. It's so inclusive in that sense.
It is absolutely. But on the other hand, there is also, like what you say in wrestling, like I instantly thought about like how girls grow up, and they just have, for example, falling experience. Like many girls only fall 1/10 of the times that a typical boy in their age would fall. Just for example, football, soccer, you're always falling. And boys are more encouraged to. I mean, this is also very much like in parkour. Like in boys are encouraged to go out and deal with the world, and females, even in the 21st century, unfortunately, are almost told to do the opposite, to stay tidy. They're still wearing, especially with this conservative movement that we have over the last decade, they're wearing pretty clothes that shouldn't become dirty, and so and this is really something I still encounter, even on a very high level, that sometimes for example, if you think of a climbing situation on a steep climb, and you need to have a toe hook, and maybe like we call it bicycling, where one foot is pressing and the other one is pulling to stabilize yourself on the wall. And then you feel, okay, that's getting really hard, and maybe you're 2 meters up, And so you want to land on your feet. So you get out of the toe hook way too early to make sure that the fall will be safe. And this can be a huge problem for your future development, to get rid of this and really try everything you can and just be confident that you will be able to manage the fall. And this is something Janja doesn't have, but like maybe from the 20th to the 40th girls in the world, they somehow in one way or the other, they're basically there. If anything in climbing holds them back, then it's almost the society they grew up when they were kids.
That's so interesting. And in our pre-talk we did, you also mentioned that there's cultural differences in climbing, and you mentioned something very interesting about the Japanese and how Swiss culture comes a bit through in Swiss climbing or route setting and so on. And you mentioned earlier that the Japanese have something very interesting about them, and they are, like you said, the route setters are very good. Like, what are these differences in climbing internationally? Can you tell us something about that?
This has different aspects. I forgot what I told you the last time. Like just in general, if you, I mean, it's in a way, it's almost that the European climbers are a little bit held back by their tradition. And just one example is. If you think about it from like moving distal to proximal, like meaning pulling on handholds, you have something in your hand and you pull on it, versus initiating the move through a hip, through a little impulse from your hip. So that would be called proximal to distal. So you have you're in a climbing position, and instead of pulling on the hold, you flick your hip a little bit and improve your raise your center of gravity and improve your position. Like everybody who started climbing when it was slightly dangerous or when this person was afraid of falling, then you would be automatically, because our hands are really well represented in our brain, your first impulse would be to pull on the hold. It's a lot easier for you to do on the brain level. And there's a lot more awareness of your fingertips than it is from your hip. So in a way, it's almost like the Japanese climbers, they are free of this burden. They never really had this. When they started climbing in Boulder gyms, so there was no reason to be afraid of anything. And also they have this culture from martial arts where you get nowhere without being in control of your center of gravity, without moving from your hips. And like if you see like all the throws in jiu-jitsu or anything, it's all about like controlling your center of mass and not like pulling strength. So up to this point, the typical Japanese world champion would do far less strength training than his European counterpart, move more from the hips and less pulling on holds. So to make this is like one little aspect but it's actually really true.
And how would you train that to change that, like for European, like for German athlete to learn that?
Well, it's almost like it became a necessity in 2016. In 2016 was the first year where the hold manufacturers actually had holds that you cannot really apply any force. Or you can apply force, but we're talking maybe just a couple of kilos. So they don't help your situation significantly. And also the frustrating part is, you build up all this fantastic grip strength, but now you're facing something that's really slippery. And it's super frustrating. It's like for your confidence. And there was actually a German setter who said, I think the first problem like this in the competition in Munich in the World Cup, and was without moving from your hip, you were not getting anywhere. So we did a lot of no-hand bouldering, low-hand slab climbing, So basically, what according to the constraints-led approach, you would take, like if you want to teach people to deal with bad handholds that don't allow for pulling, you take it away from them. So they have to find other means. And the good part also for the listener, like the first obvious idea would to do a lot of no-hand climbing.
Like this, this reminds me of this British guy. Do you know this British guy that climbs without hands and jumps like the things up? What's the name?
Johnny Dawes?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he has this funny video, where he says, "Okay, at some point, I just got bored by using my hands, so I now."
Yes, probably. I hope it's Johnny Dawes because he's my age, and like he's already in the 80s. He did this, and he's a fantastic character. I hope it's not modern YouTube influencer that
no it's like
okay, then I hope it's Johnny Dawes.
He's definitely your age, Udo, this guy. It's
but
very
really
inspiring.
really short and really Johnny Dawes.
So there is now another how can we say, another faction entered the game here, because before we had the athlete, the coach, and the route setter. Now suddenly we have the climbing hold manufacturers that are also part of shaping the climbing game. And what's the how do I say? What is happening on that side? You said the holds become, in a sense, more sophisticated. Like they try out new things. Are the holds changing, or are they becoming better? Would you say, hey, the holds got much better in the last 10 years than before?
There's no comparison, and even like. I mean, it has different elements, of course. Like if you're talking climbing gym and climbing for enjoyment and pleasure, the new holds, for example, have wider curves, so it's much more pleasant to hold. Like an old hold would be looking like this, and then it would really cut into your fingers and would be really unpleasant just from the haptics of it, like really like painful. And the idea was to prepare people for rock, because rock doesn't care if it's nice to hold on to. But in fact, because they're so uniform, and you will, in the typical 90s climbing gym, you will be holding the same hold again and again and again, was really annoying, And so now they're all like much nicer curves. This one aspect of it, and they're really pleasant and to hold without pain. All cool. But then, of course, for the competitions, they can't be too easy to hold. They need to be rather restrictive. And one idea is like that you limit how much you can use your thumb. And so one thing to do this is to have like dual texture holds, where the thumb would be on a really slippery part of the hole, and then it's not so helpful anymore. And then you can take this idea and like, why not make also other parts of the holes slippery, and only a few parts really like possible to hang on to. And one term that's really important to understand, because I think even many coaches don't understand, is the term directional hold. And this is when a hold basically is only possible to hold if your alignment is good. And this is also like the biggest factor that makes somebody like Janja Gambret or many of the modern climbers, also Adam Ondra, also so fantastic compared to their predecessors, is that basically like Janja almost flows. It's really like Bruce Lee, be like water. She flows, her body flows into the perfect alignment behind the hold. So she can hold anything. It's not her grip strength, it's about her alignment.
And part of the higher level that we see, and I think that's correct, no? If I say that the level in climbing went up in the last 20 years, and part of this is also that the holds got more diverse, got better, you have more options.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
people are growing with the
actually,
holds.
as a route setter, you have more options to make it hard for people, for the competitors.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
for the climbers, you have less options. So basically, the options are all taken
Yes.
away. You
have more constraints.
Used to look down, and exactly, and something would stick out. And on plastic, it was for a long time anything that's maybe from your bouldering. You look down and something sticks out. And that you can put some weight on it.
Yeah.
Whereas in Fontainebleau, for example, a totally different thing. Something can stick out and look really tempting, but then it's angled in a really terrible way, or it's this more slippery kind of rock surface, and then you have a huge problem. This is why still people that never climbed outdoors really struggle, especially with their feet. That's usually their biggest problem. But now the new holes, it could be something sticks out. From your perspective, it looks really okay. I just stand on this, but then it's super slippery, and so you put your foot on it, and you think, okay, this is not helping at all. Maybe I should even ignore this. Because it's so slippery.
Is there, because I was just thinking about the climbing competitions when there are things like the hold are more slippery, and so and this sounds to me like something that climbers like climbers that see it can acknowledge, oh wow, that's so slippery and so on. And I was just thinking, is there things in competitions to make it more appealing to a general audience? Like in other sports, there's sometimes that they change some rules because the game is too slow or something like this. I think that happened to soccer, if I'm not mistaken. Is there something like this in the route setting in competitions to make it more spectacular or something like this? Or is actually the people that watch climbing competitions, are they all climbers, or are non-climbers watching climbing competitions? I have no idea.
There's different I think ideas or concepts about this. You're asking the wrong person, because I find climbing competition really interesting, and I really like climbing. Is of course the same happens in football or in every sport, that people have to make cognitive decisions about what they do. But for example, if you compare to basketball, it's impossible to read for uneducated viewer. What's going on in the basketball. You're not aware of how people are being blocked. Never really can get to this player because they're blocked away. That's invisible to the casual viewer's eye. But in climbing, you have a lot of time to, you see people struggling with finding the right solution for a climb, and so basically when you watch a climbing competition, you're watching human beings problem solving. And this, for many people, is very attractive, and I think that's appealing for a big part of the audience. But of course, it doesn't go quickly. And now that it's in the Olympics, there are lots of messed up ideas of how to speed up this process, which is, I think, it's an oxymoron. You either can enjoy watching human beings problem solving, or you speed up the whole thing and have like a time element. I mean, there is a time element. You have to problem solve within 4 minutes in the final. So that there is already time constraints. But if they're only doing 2 attempts, that might come across as being boring for some. Like if you're just expecting action, that might be a little bit disappointing of what's going on. But I'm totally like in this respect, I really don't want to see any more changes to basically take the problem solving away in favor of some more spectacular things.
Yeah, like that it becomes like the speed climbing. There's just 5 seconds, and it's like spectacular in the first time you see it, but then it's also a bit like, I need more time to figure out what's happening there as a spectator also,
Yeah, it's I mean, there's all kinds of categories you can apply. It's how you can organize activities on a skill continuum. And climbing very much sits on it's an open skill. That means that you don't know what you're getting at. Like the competitors see the boulder problems for the first time when they get out. And this is part of charm of climbing for me, at least. Whereas speed is it's called the closed skill continuum. Like it's on one side, it's like the 100 meters. It will be more or less always the same. Regardless if you're in Jakarta or in Berlin, it will be always the same speed wall, which of course is also attractive for different people. If really the problem solving and the exploring part is attractive to you, you're more drawn to open skill activities. And if you're if you're a perfectionist and like to basically learn one routine, like in gymnastics, the best you can, and replicate this on a given day, then you're attracted by this aspect of activities.
And connected to this is now also what maybe create the connection here that I got you to be on the podcast with me, because there is, I think you looked in the last years also a little bit into this world of broader movement and what can you take out for your athletes and for your climbers. And here and there you got like inspiration, probably also from this word that appeared some time ago, and the biggest figure in this is, of course, Udo, who made that very popular, this open, holistic movement. Yeah, okay, we play with all sorts of things. Yeah, how much is that an interesting thing for you and the athletes to take things from these other sources, integrate it into, I don't know, warm-ups, extra exercises, trainings?
Yeah, for me personally, it's not really like that. It has been always a part, because I just told you that I did different activities. I also did track and field at one point in my life. And also I had, when I studied sports in Cologne, it was really, that's the biggest university for sports in the world. I think there's still like 6,000 students right now studying there. And at this time, you could do everything. You could be, for example, underwater rugby. Highly recommended. Like you don't know, you've never, you don't know what you're talking about. If you feel your activity is strenuous and and tiring, try underwater rugby, or juggling. And through this, I had with a fellow student. She offered me a job or engagement with a kids circus program. And I did this for 5 years in the 90s, and it's only skills. Nobody talks strength training in circus art. It's all about skills, and actually, I got a lot of ideas from this. And it's almost like. Basically, I have been there, and when somebody like Ido Portal became popular, it was already like I had seen capoeira before, and then like even parkour. As I told you, when we're climbing on the buildings, it could have been called parkour, and so I'm really agnostic what this like, and I'm also not really like even if you see something like the popularity of fascia, or fascia, it's super important. And now they're even like supposedly there's training that is fascia training. But I have a handwritten presentation that I did, I think, in '84 about Ida Rolf. Rolfing, and she was like the first person who made like even. Basically told she already knew that there's fascia, when everybody knew that there's fascia, but it was just like the whole concept was not so clear. So what I mean is like, I really appreciate the movement culture world on social media, and I get so many ideas. That's absolutely true. But if you look into the physical education book from the turn of the century, like a good 100 years ago, I get as many ideas.
I see.
It's
Yes.
really like, and from parkour, like I think in 2005, I found myself in a discussion between in parkour people, and this time was really. Like, for example, free running was considered to be the evil, flashy twin
the enemy,
of parkour.
yes.
The enemy.
Yeah.
Like, because parkour is just about displacement, it's about getting yourself to one point, but was very much in line with climbing. But then to do an unnecessary somersault would be a total no-no. And then it was also like these guys really hated. There was a Madonna video of the time where it was also the flashy parts of like all the acrobatic stuff. And for example, I'm totally not interested in discussion like this. Like, I can't appreciate any dance video as much as I don't see any inherent like this is more valuable or than somebody else.
Unfortunately, also the parkour community went beyond that. Like this, I think this discussion disappeared. Like
yes,
many years ago, unfortunately. Yes.
Yeah, as it should be. But what I also want to say is even somebody like Ido Portal, like it's very obvious where he goes, but it's also very obvious where he doesn't go. What he like when I look at what Ido Portal publishes or what is to be seen, I see a lot of things that are never addressed. Like, if he would be an athlete of mine, he would have to train totally differently than if climbing is the goal, I should say, of course, which it isn't. No? But
I did a lot of bouldering with Ido in Berlin together.
Yeah, I could imagine that it's not that great. I miss that he's never trying to get really long and extend his reach, for example.
I will not go further into it.
No, of course, no. But on the other hand, it's a little bit of fun that he's very critical, as he should be. Again, this is maybe that can be the good aspects of being a little bit controversial and say. I think, and I really appreciate it. When Ido gives many people a hard time, many cultures, many beliefs, which is fantastic, but on the other hand, he's not free of this. Any person who
definitely not.
No,
and this is what the movement culture is also suffering from. That many people look at him and then they do the same stuff. And now we I think the movement culture went into an emancipation phase where more and more other people are coming and saying, okay, let's do this and let's do that and let's do that, and that's very good, because for some years it was good that we had this, like the movement culture had the starter, but then it was in parkour, it was the same. Like, everyone was always, what is David Bell saying in this interview? Is a backflip, is it parkour or not? Because he said he does a backflip and then he says the sentence, it's not really parkour, but I like to do it. And then the community, discussed about this one sentence for years and years and years and years. And I think the same is in movement culture. And I think maybe it needs a few more years, but but
I think it ties in a little bit what I just said with a skill continuum, because I mean, in a certain way, I look at it from a really dry perspective. Like skill continuum, like even in parkour, how much are you reacting? How adaptable you have to be nowadays in parkour? Like, my impression is if posting incredible stuff on Insta, you can work on your strengths, and then you basically push them further and put them in a more spectacular environment, and then you get your attention. But my respect for people like this is like, okay, what would happen if, let's see. I mean, of course, we don't want to see people dying, but how can they react? Like, how adaptable are they? And I think that these people are really missing a huge part of the human experience. Like, if you work on your weaknesses and you only foster what you think your strengths are, you're losing adaptability. and that this, in my opinion, goes totally against the original concept of parkour, which is to be adaptable. And this is true for all the martial arts. Like all the martial arts, except like Krav Maga and MMA or so, but they have this burden of being too rigid and being really struggling with unexpected circumstances.
Yeah, especially this traditional stuff,
Yes.
no? Like I used to do Japanese traditional Bujinkan, ninjutsu, and at some point I realized, like when I got my first boxing lesson, and I realized, wait a second, that makes so much more sense than what I did in the last years, like this rigid coordinations. And for me, it was a very good practice that I did, because I learned how to see movement and also copy it, and it was very important. But from a fighting perspective, it was nonsense.
Yeah, because you have to read your opponent. You have to be ultimately adaptable, and just this aspect. I also see it a little bit of if your strength is, for example, control, then that automatically means that there is some weakness in your adaptability and for even the term. I really love one term, and I see it again and again with athletes, but is ambiguity tolerance. Being able to deal with ambiguous situations. Where it's not crystal clear, where you don't have an owner's manual, where you're at your own devices. And again, like the more you basically, the better your body control is, and the more you practice this incredible calisthenics abilities, the harder it will be for you to deal with. Now it's wet, or now something is different than your practice condition.
Udo, are your athletes doing repetitive training, like drilling, pull-ups, or something like that? Are you doing things like this, or is it very playful and diverse all the time? Can you give us an insight into this?
Yeah. No, basically, no. I mean, again, I'm not really a strict person, so if I say no, that means mainly no. Because even for myself, I sometimes, how it is now. If you're really sleepy and tired, you don't want to be. Sometimes you don't want to be creative, and you just hang on something, and then you pull up 10 times, and you're like, okay. 10 pull-ups, cool. That's fine. But of course, this is not how you get better in anything, with this. So it would be like, at least you should do like a pull-up, and then you change your hand position, and at least something like this. So we would do like, you could do a pull-up, then you could do a rollover, then you do a windshield wiper. And the issue, of course, is according to traditional strength and conditioning theory, you never really overload one muscle. So that could be, so ultimately you won't become so strong in pull-ups, for example. So that's the only thing I could imagine that stands against this. But I've been through decades of hypertrophy, pyramid, and intramuscular change. I didn't know one climber where this actually helped.
And does it, because another critique could be, it makes it harder to program if there is a lot of diversity and playfulness.
If I hear program, I really like it. There's so many. Okay, now I'm being provocative.
Please.
Like to fill out Excel sheets. Come on, this is not a skill of the 21st century. Programming. Come on. Like the way I look at it, it's very, very, like maybe I just do it with a picture. like one hand you have wrapped around a pull-up bar. Perfect. Your thumb supports it. This pull-up bar is meant to be pulled on. It's man-made. Your other hand is in a typical Frankenjura pocket situation. Like the one pocket is maybe a little bit crumbling at the edge of it. The other one is moist. Then the one for your ring finger is maybe totally out of the way. So you don't know how to load it. So what do you think, like your brain gives you permission to do? With a pull-up bar, it will give you, okay, all muscles fire. There's nothing that can go wrong. So your brain will allow you to pull on this pull-up bar. In the Frankenjura setup, your brain will be like, wait a moment. No, I'm not allowing you to pull. I am not crazy. I'm not risking your tendons and or a terrible fall. So if you ask me, maximum strength is what your brain gives you permission to do, and not what your muscles are potentially are capable of.
When you work with an athlete, and how does it work? Like, okay, let's say, you have a training day, you meet together. What happens? What happens?
Yeah, of course, I need to do my homework. So I'm very much into the minimum effective dose. What is the least the athlete can do to make the biggest difference? Like which has the smallest impact. And it's also, what's the lowest hanging fruit? What can we do? And there's a lot. This may be a very German way to look at it, like this very efficiency based almost. Like if you can spend half an hour, and then basically a new world opens for you because now you learned how to cope with this and this situation. That's a half an hour well invested, Whereas if we would work on trying to make you 1% stronger, maybe not such a good investment, So it's. I'm very much so. If we would meet, and if I would be training, I would look at what you're not good in, and then we would play with this, and maybe we find something that's that maybe didn't even occur to you, like something that you totally are capable of, but somehow in the climbing context you never really discovered this for yourself, and then of course. That would make a huge difference for you. And since I'm mostly like, if we talk high performance athletes, they're almost like teenagers or early adults. So you would be almost like a little bit old, like your perspective on things. And so, but also a lot more mature. So you can rationalize about things. But many people I'm dealing with, is really important that they're also motivated and that they get buy-in. So it's really important that things are happening and things are improving, and there's a lot of excitement to join the next session, and to work on their weakness and all of this.
Udo, I always say it fits here. I always say the most important quest of the coach is that the training is continuing. The training continues the training.
Yes. To show up is the biggest part of it. Like once they're there, I'm happy, and we surely do something cool together. No, absolutely, and so. Okay, yeah. Just one example. Like even like if there should be some like strength and conditioning people, if there should be wondering, or the whole programming notion. Like even if you think about it now, like the 1 repetition maximum. A lot of the programming is based on your 1 repetition maximum, and then you do percentages of this, and this is how you supposedly program. Yeah, this is, if you ask me, especially with teenagers, this is bullshit, because it makes a huge difference if people are motivated or not, if they're engaged or not. If it makes an engaged teenager can basically double anything the same person that is not really engaged can do. And they see this again and again. Like if you play, for example, tag, and you're being really chased, you will give it all. You will give so much more than you would give if I tell you, okay, 100 meters, run as fast as possible. No opponents. It's not the same. And it's almost like if you think about it, like a programming, and you establish one repetition maximum at the beginning of the training, blah blah blah. You have lost all this engagement. Like maybe on paper you have like a proper structured set of repetitions, and then you plan your rest and everything. But if there's no engagement, in my view, it's almost a worthless session.
And this engagement you create how?
Through really different things, like for example, like one thing that's particular, but mainly catering to. But I also do this with adults. There's, for example, there's constant like challenges, and basically. Even if we warm up with ping pong, there would be some element that is a little bit stressing or like engaging. Like they're always like one thing that's, for example, I think is really important to establish from very early on. There will be consequences. Like human beings react really strongly to consequences, even if the consequences are ridiculous. So, like if I already mentioned, floor is lava. So and if you step into the lava, there should be some consequences. That means some over the summer I coached the Hong Kong climbing team, and they got like if they did a mistake or something wrong, or they touched the floor, for example, they got a little hairband in their hand. So some of them had the whole hair with little hairbands as a little punishment. They were really enjoying this. That's not the point, but it's actually like according to psychology, it's not important what it is. It can't be. That's not about this. Or like anything with hair. Like even if I would ask you, like one punishment for you could be you have to get a really clean shave. Maybe you wouldn't really like yourself for the first couple of days. You want to get my unshaven look, but so that would be plenty of punishment for you, if you mess up. And so this and I know that of course it goes a little bit against the friendly atmosphere of trust. So, but I don't have a lot of trust issues. Like maybe it's become because of me being a lot older. I don't have like lots of people that I feel that they're not trusting myself. So I'm much more provocative and a lot more challenges. And if we jump, we might as well see who can jump further. Or jump with a little. With a little extra complexity, and it also helps me if I deal with groups, to regress or progress certain challenges.
I have to say on the side, it's a joke, Udo, but it's a German playfulness, no? Like you're very, very playful, Udo, but it's efficient and people get punished if they don't do it correctly.
Totally. Yeah. No, I'm aware. Like there's a really strange mixture from inside. I'm really cold and really like an accountant, and I really tick also boxes. But it's all like on the surface is the total opposite. But I'm really. I really try to if you. I do a lot of recordings of my sessions, and also to see myself in the role of a coach, and very often it has been a little bit almost shocking of what a bad job I did, looking at the video now of how some athletes were not participating, and maybe certain ideas didn't work. But if I see, for example, after a session, okay, I really thought we would be dealing with explosiveness or with risk management, and then we didn't do this, then I'm really really like an accountant. Okay, I cannot tick this box, so we have to do it. It's always in the back of my mind. Like, okay, did we work on this? Did we work on this? Like Joseph has been struggling with his balance and this, and while he was moving his head. So we really have to work on gaze behavior with him, stuff like this. So that's really, yeah.
It's very interesting that you said this about the filming. And Udo, a lot of the people that listen to my stuff are coaches and trainers. So I think they will all take a note about that, about filming, like not just filming your athletes, because that's pretty clear, hopefully for everyone, that how much sense this makes to film your athletes and look at it in slow motion or together with the athletes and see, hey, did you see what you did there? And so on. But also to film yourself how you teach. Is there more things on your mind in this direction?
Absolutely.
Like for
absolutely.
other coaches?
Because I have a lot of, and this is actually, I get a lot of bookings, so I do a lot of courses that deal with, okay, I have, or our club has so and so many groups, but they're wildly diverse, and we really need more ideas. And also, I just like, for example, next year I'm going to Norway, to the biggest climbing club in Norway, and they have huge youth program. And there's several factors that are a problem for them. Say you have like maybe 10 kids in your group, and of course they can be really different. Like there can be really well coordinated kids that also like they had already grown out, so there's less issues with them knowing their body, so on. So they come across as being much more talented. And then also, and this unfortunately really big part of it, then they have their parents. And the parents, of course, don't want their genius kids to mingle with the untalented kids. So what the coaches, they get under huge, they get always told by the parents, but my kid has to do more. My kid has to play with the other talented kids, blah, blah, blah. And what unfortunately is not a thing in climbing is to have a lot of ideas in this situation. So what I just meant to regress, okay, Joseph, cool, you're obviously a lot better in what we are playing with today. So, but there's no reason for you to become arrogant, because I will ask you to do the same boulder problem blindfolded, or I will throw balls at you and you have to dodge the balls while you're doing the boulder problem, because you're so much better, So now I have a huge repertoire of basically regressing and progressing everything. And I can really, and this is really, I'm in a fantastic situation, because I'm dealing with world-class athlete on a constant basis. So I know, basically, if you Adam Ondra, I could immediately tell you what Adam Ondra is not good in, and have him deal with this, and so he wouldn't get arrogant and wouldn't disturb the practicing of the rest of the group. So this is in general is a huge part. And just going back to your question, like this is just one example. In 2015, we had Akio Noguchi here in Cologne. She was visiting and she asked me for training. It was a little unexpected. And then we played a little bit with her, and she's like this, if you don't know the name, like one of the most impressive climbers ever. And also one of the, I shouldn't say hardest workers, but the one who stayed world class despite the sport moving in the direction she was not really talented and prepared for, and she still coped with this. And like I had the camera behind the group, there were some other Japanese climbers, and Mio Nonaka, who is still competing, was maybe 17, 18 at the time, and was in certain challenges much more talented. And even Akio Noguchi withdrew from the practicing because, and this is it's just a fact of human behavior. If your best friend does really well and you struggle, how much will you participating? How big is the temptation of you trying to, and also other people are watching you. So, and maybe you don't want to be put on the spot and struggle with this. So you won't get less practice because you will withdraw from the practicing. And this is something that's actually, that doesn't necessarily have to do with you as a coach and maybe not with the individual athlete, but if you're really honest to yourself about the session, you must really say, okay, this person, because of peer pressure or because of other circumstances, didn't get the practice they should have actually gotten in the session.
So, yeah, okay, so you're there very critical about your own work in that sense there, no? And say, okay, there as a coach, I could have done this better.
Yeah.
Do I understand you correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. Like if I watch the athletes competing, but there's no, like at least half of it, of their failures goes on my account. We could have worked on this. Like especially drastic moment was when we got out at the World Championships in 2014. With Jan Hoyer and Jule Worm. They both were in the finals. And I looked at because nobody has seen the problems, so I was getting out, and I looked at the girls' problems, 1 to 4, and I was like, okay, I mean, it happened differently than I thought. But like we had practiced everything. Like for Jule had done everything in this finals. So she was well prepared. So I did do the same thing with the boys. I go like first problem, okay. Second problem, okay. Third problem, oh. And I saw one element that we hadn't practiced for the last month, and this is where Jan Hoyer lost the World Championships. And this was regardless of how Jan feels about it, but it was not cool. There was one element, and I should have known too, because Jan wasn't naturally talented in this. It was his weakness anyhow. I still don't understand how we couldn't practice this.
Interesting. Udo, we're going towards the end from the time, I think, because we're at sort of 1.5 hours, and I think that's it's good if we slowly wrap up to let the listener also do something else in their life if they want. I have a few more questions, a few small questions, Udo. I have one question about this world of competing and climbing. When do you need to start to become a world-class climber nowadays? Is it like in many other sports that you have to start, like in soccer or ballet or gymnastics, that you have to start at, let's say, 3 years old? Is that similar?
I think no, absolutely. I mean, this is a huge discussion: early or late specialization, and I think, like in general, in every sport, they're moving away from early specialization because early specializations might be an advantage if people don't burn out, of course, or get injured. Is an advantage mainly in the closed activities, like in gymnastics, where you repeat the same things over and over again. If you don't expect, never in your competitive life, you have to catch a ball being thrown at you. It's the world is much more orderly, and then maybe you get away with early specialization. Whereas, for example, bouldering, let's take even Adam Ondra. There's no question that he's the most accomplished climber in the world. Nobody would argue about this. But like certain elements that developed in modern bouldering are just really hard for him to do. And for example, if you see the guy sprinting, it looks like a joke. It was something he has never done. He was climbing all his life. He has not a huge experience with other activities. And this is what nowadays limits his chances of success in the modern competition. So going back to, I would think if you're 16 and, for example, if you have done parkour, but it can be also like in terms of one of the best German females, Martina Demmel. She was a ski racer till she was 16, and then she started climbing. And 3 years later, she climbed 9A on rock. So that's possible. So I guess I would think like 16 maybe sounds a little bit late for the but obviously it depends on what you have been doing before. But you are the 16-year-old. Yeah, I think, for example, you with 16, I think you would be in a good position to basically. I don't think that something would hold you back. And if you compare this with me, for example, with 16, like coming from a power endurance sport with a lot of repetitive training, my shoulder mobility already with 16 would have been very limiting to me. And also my ability to even be explosive, like if you have a history of doing slow repetitive movement, or slow compared to explosive, then of course you're not in a good position to learn new boulder moves. So I think there's more a better way to think about it, that you want to be very adaptable, have a nice repertoire of for example, basketball is a really good donor activity to climbing. Although most people probably wouldn't think of basketball, but like if you catch a hold or if you catch a ball, that's not so different as many people think.
Interesting. And encouraging what you say, that some people do a late start, because it tells also people, hey, let's say I'm 30 and I start climbing, it means I can still get decent. If some people start at 16 and become world class, then starting late and become like okay, like, that I myself can say, hey, I'm an okay climber. That's cool. That's very encouraging. And I can add to this that I have one student that learned from me this general movement approach, and he's now working with FC Bayern München with looking at new talents.
Scouting.
And exactly. And testing them in other things, like not just how good they are playing soccer, because they figured out, okay, it can be that they are super good at soccer, but because they are very narrow developed, actually they're developing they've developed in soccer plateaus at some point. So it's better to search for the people that are good at soccer, but also good at a wide range of activities. Udo, do you have a favorite place in the world to climb, like an outdoor place?
Yeah, Fontainebleau would be definitely, of course, in bouldering. And the advantage is, we mentioned this already, that everybody can have fun in Fontainebleau. Whereas in many of the more modern bouldering areas, it's mainly the harder problems that are developed. And also, if you're intermediate or beginning climber, or maybe just not so terribly interested, but you still like to give it a try, then Fontainebleau would be by far your best bet to go climbing, an experienced climber, climbing, I think. And then,
is there a sorry, Udo, I didn't want to
go.
disrupt.
It was Fontainebleau related, because otherwise I would tell you about my favorite. If you want to, like, basically the other end of the spectrum. Now you're into climbing for the exposure, for the whole experience, and you want to wouldn't mind to be a little bit afraid, but still under safe circumstances, then I would really recommend Verdun Canyon in southern France, in the Haute-Provence. This is the deepest canyon in Europe, and it's a fantastic limestone of a fantastic quality. Nothing breaks off in the Verdun, and you can experience multi-pitch climbing in. I'm not saying that a lot of things can go wrong, but at least nothing will fall on your head, and the rock will be solid. So
this is Verdun, like from where they fought in the first.
No, that is Verdun.
How is it? How do you?
Verdon. Gorge du Verdun.
Okay. I never heard about this. I need to look this up.
That is really is a cool. Even the Whitewater River below it, and if you look, you're on the wall and you put your foot up, you focus maybe of just 1 meter, and you put your foot up. But then if you let your focus on 600 meters below you, you see the little river below your feet. So it's incredibly exposed. It's really, it's crazy. You know, it's
like this,
so
this a rock climbing area?
Yeah. And the tricky part is also like what really adds to your anxiety is that you rappel down. You come from the canyon edge and then you rappel down and then you climb up again. And this is really, so you're dealing with the anxiety and the exposure from the get on, you know, which is really unique.
Okay, you start from the top, get down,
you wrap
climb
down,
back up.
and then maybe you have even a hanging belay. It's a little bit harder, and then you climb from the hanging belay, and it's crazy. It's like, and it's still relatively what I said at the beginning. You know, like you can die there, obviously, but you have to make a huge mistake. You don't have to tie your knot, and so. Whereas if you would do the same thing in the Alps, there is limestone of almost the Verdun quality also in the Alps, like if you go to Retikon or so. But then you have like the weather, and you have much more factors that are beyond your control. That could be a problem. So if you're mainly into climbing for the experience, but we don't really want to deal with unexpected, like what I said at the beginning, like avalanches, rockfall or so, then the Verdun is really something to consider. This is in Europe,
Yeah. Is there a climbing place that you haven't been to that you want to go to? That's on your list.
Not really. No, because I've been all over the world, and no. It's almost, as I said at the beginning. It's almost like at the beginning. Of course, the whole traveling and discovering thing was really big, but now I'm almost full circle. Like I enjoy our Cologne bridges from time to time as much as I did in the 80s.
Do you have a favorite climbing gym? Like, and you cannot say Standwerk in Cologne. Would you say that? Would that be your favorite?
No. There are several gyms in, like for example, in Berlin. I just was there once, but I think the setting in Berlin is really good. Like, that's at least my impression. And we went with Jule. We went to Bertha Block, and it was really, really fantastic setting. And so, for me, the gyms distinguish themselves through the setting. I don't care about the bistro and all of this. But the setting in Berlin, for example, I think is really good. And there are several gyms with really good setting in Germany, but there's also some gym owners also maybe don't care, and then it's not the best experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last thing, Udo. Is there something that you want to share with the climbing world, or with the people listening, that you feel is something important, something that people is a blind spot of people?
No, I don't want to, because for me, of course, these new developments, like, for example, watching YouTube videos and then travel to Fontainebleau and with just one goal to climb this one thing that you rehearsed on YouTube. Fair enough. You know, like maybe I would do the same thing if I would be 16, 20 now. But for me, it's taking a little bit away from climbing. You know, for me, it's still to this point, the impressive climbers are the ones that can be thrown in any situation. It's very much like how I see parkour too. You know, like for me, it's not like if you can do something really nice with really basic setup of rails and so, you know, and do something really creative, I have more respect for you than if you do this really dangerous but well rehearsed stunt once in your life, and build your whole reputation on this one stunt. So what I want to say is, I would hope for every climber right now to still keep this in mind. You know, like it's it's ultimately it's about your journey, and if you take if you don't allow yourself to figure out a certain movement problem yourself, you're not enjoying the whole experience. Let's put it this way.
Beautiful. Thank you, Udo. Thank you so much for giving us your time here and sharing all this experience. There were a lot of gems here. And Udo, this will not be the last time I will ask you to share something. And I hope we have a second time here soon.
You're welcome.